Monday is starting to feel like a turning point in America's rural economy, and today we're diving into a carefully watched, deeply consequential story that lands right in the heart of Pennsylvania's farms. It's Monday, pause short September, pause short 15, 2025, and this is a special in-depth episode focusing on one pause short important, pause long immigration story that affects workers, families, and the food on our tables. Think of it as a close look at what happens when labor can't show up just when the harvest is at its peak, and how that ripples through barns, packing houses, and grocery shelves alike. We'll unpack what led to the crackdown, who's paying the price, and what comes next for policy, for farms, and for workers trying to navigate work authorization in a tense moment. This episode isn't about assigning blame or laying out political talking points. It's about the practical consequences people feel every day when enforcement actions hit the fields and the dairy barns where the work happens. Let's start with the scene on the ground. The crackdown, including high-visibility raids, began to ripple through Pennsylvania this summer, with stories of ICE actions at a Montgomery County farmers market and other enforcement actions sparking a widespread fear among immigrant workers. Farms report that within days, large crews in key sectors like dairy and produce simply stopped showing up. The numbers are striking. Overall, the U.S. agricultural workforce fell sharply between pause short March, pause short, and pause short July, pause short, and Pew projects suggest hundreds of thousands of immigrant workers vanished from the labor pool nationwide. In Pennsylvania, farm groups estimate that roughly 30,000 workers, pause short May, pause short lack legal status, with dairy and produce hardest hit. Some operators say as much as 70% of their crews disappeared after the raids, even when the farms themselves weren't directly, pause long, contacted by authorities. The human impact is immediate and brutal. Crops left unpicked, milked cows needing care with fewer hands, delivery windows slipping, and rising spoilage that translates into higher costs for consumers. One farmer described the blunt challenge in blunt terms: we need people to do the jobs Americans won't do, but the reality on the ground is that the workers aren't there, and the business can't function the same way. So what does this mean for the farmers and for workers who rely on these jobs? Some farmers have faced hard choices about scaling back production, selling livestock, or closing sections of their operations. Tim Wood, a dairy producer, reported selling hundreds of cattle because he couldn't maintain herd care with the available staff. Delivery times have stretched from days to longer, raising the risk of spoilage in missed market windows. The broader implication is clear. When the labor supply in agriculture shrinks, it doesn't just delay a harvest. It threatens livelihoods, regional food security, and local economies that depend on steady farming employment. The question now is what comes next. Federal and state officials, responses, potential policy adjustments, and how growers will adapt in the coming weeks as harvest pressure builds and the labor market remains unsettled. Why, pause long should you care if you're listening from the city or across the country? Because these farms feed local communities, impact school lunches, supermarket shelves, and prices. The episode isn't just about enforcement. It's about the people who show up every day to plant, prune, milk, and move food to market, and the red tape, fear, and logistical realities that shape whether they can work legally and safely. The broader takeaway is a reminder that immigration policy and labor markets are tightly intertwined with everyday life and national food security. As we look ahead, the key questions are whether there will be policy clarifications or work authorization pathways that can stabilize farms this season and beyond, and how workers can navigate a landscape where pause short deadline, pause longs, and enforcement actions can suddenly change a schedule that farms and families rely on. For listeners, that means paying attention to pause short deadline, to the status of work authorizations, and to the steps farms, pause short May, all short take to protect their operations while supporting workers who keep the food supply moving. To stay informed on developments, pause long visit VisaVerge and follow our ongoing coverage as this story evolves, because the choices made now will shape harvests and livelihoods well into next year. VisaVerge.com